listening to You Would Think, the Philadelphia Flyers podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Collington, and joining me today, the one and only Mr. Kevin Durso. How are you, buddy?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing all right. It's been a couple of weeks. We are full-blown into our summer schedule, and we will be talking about the playoffs here in just a second. We do have a little bit of Flyers news to get to before that. In the meantime, before we jump into today's show, check out our YouTube channel. Search You Would Think over on YouTube, and you can find us over there. Our episodes go up usually about 8 o'clock on Sunday nights, so you can find us over there. All right, getting right into it. Flyers really are the belle of the ball in the free agent coaching market, huh?
I think they're the team that carries some of the most intrigue. I mean, okay. I don't know if they're the tops, but they're one of the tops in terms of intrigue. Because the question about how, and I think we mentioned this last show, the question about, and I know I talked about it this week on 97.3 as well. The question about the intrigue or the attractiveness of the job has come up a lot in the last couple of weeks. Like now that the search can really get going, it's a question of, how attractive is this job compared to blank? And obviously, there's been some changes in the coaching market in the last couple of weeks.
Yep.
The Islanders have made their choice. They stuck with in-house. And, in all fairness, they made the right call in the sense that if you had to make a coaching change, they did not. But if you had to, as the Islanders, you knew Lane Lambert was going to get phone calls.
Right.
Because he's a highly touted assistant in the league. So that seemed like a natural move for them. So, okay, that's fine. But it takes them off the pick. Like, they're out of the picture now.
Right.
So you're looking at, Winnipeg, Detroit. And for a while, that's really all that there was. I think it's pretty safe to say that Edmonton does not have a coaching vacancy anymore. Because,
no.
We'll get into the reason why, obviously, when we get to the playoff stuff. I don't think they have a vacancy right now.
Right.
Even if they do, the longer that all this plays out in the playoffs, the less likely they are to get anybody who's, any
of the high-value targets.
Well, maybe that's – I don't want to say that because there's so many guys out there that are.
You're not
that
wrong. They
could still get somebody, but I don't know that you would turn – like, I think at this point, I think you wouldn't turn the page permanently to anything more than what's currently working. And, there's – when we get to the Edmonton thing, we'll go into more of that, like, with the playoff stuff. But the celebration at the end when they win – kind of, from a coaching standpoint, he looks like he knows something's working, and there's – that little bit of magic dust that gets sprinkled over a team in the playoffs.
Yep.
Something's going on there, and in a good way, obviously. So they don't really have a concern.
I agree.
I am curious about Florida now, and we'll get into them in the playoffs as well, but I'm curious about Florida because that question's going to come up.
Yeah, the fact that we don't know, and it's already been several days, is interesting.
No, I think that gives you some clarity, to be honest. Because if it was something, I think you would jump right in.
Okay.
But they also haven't affirmatively removed the interim tag either.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I guess it's the question, but
the fact that it's still up in the air one way or the other.
Right. But then you add in, we've talked already about Vegas and Dallas and those vacancies coming in as well. So that you've got a few. There's still a few teams out there.
Yeah, and so the Flyers have interviewed as of right now that we definitively know of. We're looking at 3 names, right?
Right. Could be more. I feel like we'd know a lot more about the other names if there were, but let's start with those guys.
Right. We got John Tortorella, who we've talked about a little bit on this show, who confirmed it live on the air that he interviewed for the Philadelphia Flyers head coaching job. We have Barry Trotz, who confirmed that he interviewed for this job as well as the Winnipeg job. I believe he's confirmed.
I don't know. Right? No, I don't know if he's confirmed it directly. Like Tortorella directly confirmed it himself.
Okay, you're right.
It
has been confirmed.
Correct. In Trotz's case, it has been confirmed that he has interviewed for 2 jobs. And then
the third name on the list is a little bit out of nowhere if you're not paying super close attention. A guy named Mike Vellucci.
Right.
Tell us who Mike Vellucci is.
Okay, Mike Vellucci is a member of the Pittsburgh Penguins. Right now he's an assistant coach for the Pittsburgh Penguins. Has been in the organization for the last 3 years. Coached 1 season as the head coach / GM of the AHL team in Wilkes-Barre Scranton, and before that was involved with the Carolina organization. I find this decision to interview him to be fascinating for this reason. His position with Carolina, because he coached for a while. He coached for a long time, levels below, level
right,
below.
The man has put his dues in.
Oh, yeah. This is a progression. Like, this is a guy who has not had been a head coach at the NHL level, but has done just about everything else that you can think of. Here's the interesting part to me, especially when you consider the state of the team and this kind of, because let's put it this way. Let's talk about this with Barry Trotz for 1 second before I get into it with Vellucci, because Barry Trotz, no secret, kind of has his eyes on management post-coaching, correct? Like it's been out there. Okay, so you start to think about, in Trotz's case, if you're going to go somewhere and coach, you're probably going to end up going wherever you think the easiest transition will be.
Okay.
If that's Winnipeg, that's Winnipeg. If they see a path where, even if it's just you're coaching for 3 years, and when you're done coaching in the 3 years, you're going to move straight to the front office.
And we've talked about Winnipeg being home for him, so there are other factors at play there.
Well,
as well.
Right, but I'm saying like if that's a game plan that they want to go with,
right,
then that might work in his favor. If the Flyers are sitting here saying, "Listen, we're not really looking for anybody who comes into the general manager position or anything close to that. We strictly are talking coaching here."
Right, we're looking at a bench boss job, and that's it.
I don't know that he's necessarily interested in the typical, here's a 5-year coaching contract, right? Like I don't know. I don't want to dismiss it. He's interviewed with the Flyers. We can't take that away, but I don't want to dismiss it. And from the Flyers standpoint, like that's what I'm saying. I don't want to also dismiss the fact that they may be so hardened on, hey, we're looking for a coach. We're just looking for a coach. No input on the construction of the roster itself.
Right.
You're going to get here's your players. Find a way to make it work, right? Like that could very well be the case. What would make it interesting to me is Vellucci spent a long time. He spent 5 years with Carolina, eventually shifting over to coach the Charlotte Checkers in the AHL, where he was coach/GM again.
Right.
But prior to that, and during the 2 years he's coaching the team in Charlotte, the AHL team, he's also got the title of assistant GM and director of hockey ops for Carolina.
Interesting.
Now, you tell me why you would be interested in a coach at this point.
Who helped assemble the current Carolina Hurricanes?
Who had his hands all over the current Carolina Hurricanes. Exactly.
Hi, the team that's in the Eastern Conference, or one game away from the Eastern Conference Final. Yes. We'll talk about that later.
Right, but that has been among the best teams in the NHL regular season wise for going on at least 3 years now.
Right, since his players would have come up and made an impact.
Right. Now, granted, the last 3 years and all this time, he's got nothing to do with them.
Sure.
But let's put it this way. You can't deny that every year we ask the question, is this it for Pittsburgh? Are they done? Are the glory years over? And just about every year, they're getting something out of somebody.
Right.
And he's part of that bench, whether you like it or not. Like, he's part of that group.
Yep.
He's finding a way to do something in his role under Mike Sullivan that works for that team, that gets them into the playoffs. I mean, let's put it this way. Are they the team that we're talking about against Carolina right now if they have a goalie for the whole series? I mean, possibly, right?
Right.
And if that's the case, then they didn't even interview him.
Yep.
And if that's the case, he becomes an even more attractive name because of the fact that they were in a position. They were up 3-1 in the series. By all accounts, it looked like they were going to move on. I don't think that he specifically is responsible for them not moving on.
No, I agree. That's fair.
You know what I mean?
But if he... I'd be curious to see how much of a part he played in the development of guys like Jacob Slavin, like Brett Pesce, like Sebastian Aho, Toivo Teravainen.
And I think
like these guys that came up through the organization. Mm-hmm. If he was a part of let's assume that these timelines match up here, and he's the coach/GM of the AHL team when all these guys are coming up through the AHL.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
Well, let's be real. Who's the biggest name you can tie to his time there? It's an easy one. From the draft.
Did he draft Sebastian Aho?
No, I was thinking Svechnikov.
Oh,
Svechnikov went second overall right in the middle of that era, of that period, those 5 years. Because we're talking the last 3 with the Pittsburgh organization. So he's coaching the minor league team in 1920, and he's an assistant in 2021 and 21-22 for Pittsburgh.
Okay. So
the years before that, we're talking 5 years that ends in 2019. So you're talking like 2014.
So 15. Everybody up until that, so the whole team, just team,
just about. I mean, and granted, that includes anything that you decided to do to bring somebody like, another guy who's directly tied to him that's not there right now, whose name should have been coming up last night for sure.
Okay.
He had everything to do with, or not everything, but he had part of everything to do with Alex Nedeljkovic.
Okay.
Like,
Yep.
that's a goalie who's playing in Charlotte while
I still can't believe they let him walk.
But that's a goalie who not only was part of the development process during his years as an assistant GM or whatever, he coached him in the minors. Like those years he's coaching Charlotte, Nedeljkovic is there.
Right. Yeah, so Mike Vellucci is definitely a name to keep an eye on. I know he doesn't have the national star value of a Trotz or a Tortorella.
Yes.
But the guy has the resume. The guy has done everything there is to do at the minor league level. If you're going to give a new coach a shot, this is how you do it. This is the correct kind of guy to hire, right? This guy or a guy like Kirk Muller coming out of Montreal, who's gotten a little bit of a shot before, but not really.
Well, now he was with Calgary, by the way. So
yeah.
So everybody who listens to us is gonna know him from Montreal because there was you can't deny there was the whole beef that happened in the bubble when with Brendan Gallagher and all this stuff and the video gate where they had an angle that nobody else had, sent it to the league.
Crazy.
Got Matt Niskanen suspended for a game as a result. Still didn't win the game.
We talked about it a little bit before the show. The bubble was insane.
The whole thing was, yeah.
Just that whole thing, that whole summer, that whole month of August is a fever dream.
It's really funny to watch the ties to the bubble now that are coming up in this coaching search.
Yeah.
Because let's put it this way. Again, we already mentioned the three names we can, that can be confirmed to have interviewed with the Flyers. Kirk Muller, Elliot Friedman said they have interest in potentially. And we'll see how interested they are now that Calgary's not in the playoffs anymore. That's the whole, with any of these assistant coaches, Vellucci included, that's the whole interesting tie, right? If they're coaching a playoff team as an assistant coach, you can't do anything until the team's not playing.
Right.
So you're stuck waiting for these moments when you go, okay, now let's see how interested they really are. Because we can talk interest all we want to in Kirk Muller, in Jim Montgomery. Nothing's firm until we start seeing the stuff about they interviewed them or they've contacted them. And until that happens, it's nothing more than a rumor that they're interested. Yep. And now that Muller's out of the playoffs and now that Montgomery's out of the playoffs, now we should start here it comes. We've got these three names. We got at least they are doing what they said or what we've heard that they are going to do, which is leaving no stone unturned. Because if you're talking to the likes of Trotz and Tortorella, interviewing a guy like Vellucci, planning to talk to either a Jim Montgomery or a Kirk Muller or whatever, you're all over the map. You're covering every bit of whatever that you can.
It's a good time to start looking here. This is when the coaching search is kind of going to ramp up in earnest because nobody fires their coach after a third round exit, right? Well, you can fire your coach after a first round exit. I think Jared Bednar might have had a conversation if they had lost in the second round again. But generally speaking, all the coaches that have been fired have been fired.
Right. The only holdup with anybody that's still left is if there is an assistant on the bench for those teams that you want to jump in on, because that's the biggest holdup with those teams. Because if you're a team in the conference final or eventually the Stanley Cup final, and you are an assistant on those teams, your value is skyrocketing right now because of the fact that everybody out there is going to sit there and look, and not that it because who's the guy? There's another name that I've heard mentioned before. I'm going to look it up really quick.
Okay.
To make sure I say the name right, but I'm going to.
Coming out of Europe.
No.
You're not. That's not who I'm thinking of.
Derek Lalonde.
Okay.
Who's an assistant for the Tampa Bay Lightning. Now, if you're the Tampa Bay Lightning or any other team in the league, you're not getting a John Cooper out of a Tampa Bay Lightning team because he's not going anywhere. But you certainly, after at least two, potentially three Stanley Cups in a row, you may be calling for one of the assistants going, hey, you know what? That's the guy I want coaching my.
That's fair. I was thinking of Rickard Gronberg, and they're not going to get Gronberg, but it would be great.
That's I had heard about him. Yes. He's the Swedish coach, right?
Yes.
Okay. Is he coaching he coached because he coaches the World Junior team usually. Is he coaching the World's team right now?
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, because I've mentioned David Quinn on here before too, and he's coaching the world's like the U.S. World team. So there you go. You got guys who are out there doing stuff that all can come up at any point, and among those guys, because look, I'm not going to sit here and jump the gun on a guy like Mueller and say for sure like that was Friedman saying that was the first time I've heard his name come up in conversation.
Okay.
It is not a secret that Jim Montgomery's name has come up a lot.
Right, and why wouldn't he?
Right,
he's
that one
gonna
I'm
be
waiting for.
He's going to be involved in all of these coaching vacancies. He's going to interview in Vegas. He's going to everyone with a vacancy is calling Jim Montgomery.
They should.
Right, if they're not, they're doing their organization a failure.
Well, either that or very clearly they have like I don't know if Vegas wants the redemption tour project that Montgomery is, or if they just want to go in and go, listen, I'm calling Barry Trotz because I know.
I was going to say Vegas wants their best chance to win.
Yes, because you got to acknowledge where Vegas is. That's what I'm saying.
I'm still waiting for Vegas to go full evil empire and talk to Q. Tell me you can't say it.
It's not that I can't see it. I do have to make note that first of all, there's not a lot of buzz about a lot of the if nothing else, there's the most information that's out there, or at least the team that seems to be talking to the most people is the Flyers.
Yeah, they've definitely been the most publicly active.
Right. I don't ever hear right now, at least, anything about all you ever hear when Vegas comes up is Vegas is a possibility. But it's there's a but statement, but they haven't talked to anybody.
Speaking of Vegas, what are your thoughts on the Philadelphia Flyers potentially hiring Pete DeBoer? Because, I mean...
It's no different than a lot of the veteran coaches that are out there for me anyway, because to me, I think it would work for a year or two in terms of he'll come in and he'll come in kind of ready to make the changes that he feels are necessary, and it might pay off in the early going here.
He's a blank check coach.
He probably is to the people who write those checks, I'm sure.
If you've been listening to us for a while, you've heard us talk about the blank check mentality. And if the Flyers are going to attempt to slap a Band-Aid on it and win next year, you hire a guy like Pete DeBoer or John Tortorella or, to a lesser extent, Barry Trotz, just because I think Barry Trotz is a generally excellent coach, and you hire him regardless.
Trotz, to me, is legitimately the blank check coach. There's not a value and there's not a money amount that you could come up with that I wouldn't tell you he deserves from somebody.
That's fair.
Tortorella, I think, knows the situation. Not with the Flyers I'm talking about, but in general. He didn't coach last year. These coaches that usually take, and I don't want to say that because let's just wait. Alain Vigneault took a year off, came back, started coaching the Flyers, and made some money. It's not like it doesn't happen. But I think a coach like Tortorella knows the importance of the resources of the organization and understands how it looks to kind of have been out of the game for a year and wanting to come back in. I don't think DeBoer is worth whatever you would give Trotz, and probably not even Tortorella.
I agree.
So it's hard. I get where you're coming from is right in theory. They're the blank check coaches in the sense that if you want to go out and get a guy like that, you're starting to write the check and you write a big check. This isn't Jim Montgomery or David Quinn or the assistant coach that you find attractive out there that you go, okay, that's the direction I want to go, and I'm paying the guy $1 million or 1.5 to coach my team.
Right. Well, and I am interested. Because we have seen the aggression in the Tortorella and the Trotz, and, we've heard interest about some other, kind of more immediate names, that's why the Mike Vellucci interview fascinates me so much, because that seems to be more in line with what you and I have been talking about, and certainly in line with
me, yeah.
Setting up a little bit of a rebuild and taking 2, 3, 4 years and really setting the franchise up for long-term sustainable success. Right. And I'm kind of getting my hopes up because, I know they're going to go with the flashy, loudmouth name.
They probably will.
Right.
Well, here's the best way I can break this down. Because, first of all, here's the reason why Vellucci sounds so good to me. And I hadn't really considered him before, maybe because we knew what names were kind of out there, and I kind of just thought, listen, it doesn't have to be a guy who wants to or has in the past gotten his hands on either development directly, like developing a roster. I mean, not player development, but like
Creating a roster.
He doesn't have to be the guy who builds the thing. He just has to be the guy who knows how to implement a system and help players grow to their fullest.
He knows how to drive the bus.
I kind of said that stuff because I really didn't believe in my heart here that they were going to go out and even consider a guy who had any connections to a front office ever before.
That's why I think it's going to break my heart when they hire Tortorella, because they gave us the tease with, we could have gotten, Vellucci. Could have gotten a guy who would actually set us up for a long-term.
Well, the thing about Vellucci, the reason why I like it is because of the fact that, to me, it only adds the pressure that's already on a Chuck Fletcher and company.
And also screw on Hextall, am I right?
I guess. But
I remember the Mark Friedman waiver claim, Ron.
But it only adds to the pressure that they're under to build it even better, because now you've got a coach who should have his input and heard well. I mean, you're not hiring that guy just as your coach at that point.
No.
And that coach might be his only title, but you're hiring him and full on, I think, asking him, evaluate our talent from that standpoint. Evaluate it like an assistant GM. Evaluate it like you run the team. Evaluate this team and then give us some input on what we're missing. Like, I think all of that stuff comes into play, and I would feel that way a little bit about Trotz to that extent, because Trotz has not made it, it's not secret that he wants to have that kind of role in the future. So I know he's going to evaluate the team.
Yeah, I think Chuck Fletcher would view Barry Trotz as a bit of a threat.
But that's why I'm saying if you're going to view Barry Trotz as a threat based on that, then Mike Vellucci's a huge threat.
That's fair, but I think Chuck Fletcher is directly worried about his job, and I don't think Mike Vellucci, a guy who hasn't coached in the NHL, is going to be getting a GM job within 3 or 4 years.
Well, right, but
whereas Barry Trotz.
But I don't think Barry Trotz is going to get a GM job. I think Barry Trotz just wants to move into the special assistant, the advisory role.
Right, but if he does that for 1 year, and does well, and Chuck Fletcher gets fired,
well, I'm not.
He slides right in.
Okay, and here's the reason why I'm kind of shaking my head at that. Chuck Fletcher doesn't have that kind of time.
That's fair.
Like, Chuck Fletcher has.
Well, I'm assuming that the first 3 years with Barry Trotz coaching work out fairly well, and that's why Chuck Fletcher's still there in 4 years.
Well, right, but see, at that point, then you're not worried about whether or not the guy has management say anymore.
You're right.
You're not, to me, the reason why, if you don't hire Barry Trotz, if you don't even hire Mike Vellucci, and I don't see any reason why, if you do, okay, I can understand why you wouldn't get Barry Trotz. I don't understand why you may not be able to get a Mike Vellucci, who's never coached at the NHL level as a head coach, who may, after all of these years in the league, probably wants it.
Oh, yeah.
That's the guy, because I brought up earlier, the attractiveness of the position. Because there's a lot of people that are putting it at the bottom of the list and are saying, it never usually used to be this way, that people didn't want to come to a team like this.
Can you blame them?
No, I don't. But what I'm saying is
what roster would you rather coach, the Philadelphia Flyers or the current Detroit Red Wings?
I agree. I agree with where you're going with that. What I'm saying is there's a difference between, if you're Jim Montgomery, who was a head coach for a year and a half, had issues, personal issues, and did something that, according to the team's official release when all of it happened, was conduct that was unacceptable, detrimental to the team, all that type of stuff, right? If you're looking for the redemption tour, there is no job that's unattractive to you. You want to go anywhere there's an opening.
Anybody who's willing to give you the shot.
If you're an assistant who's never coached before, been a head coach at the NHL level, you're interested in everything because you know it's your opportunity to be in command.
Right.
If that's I understand that the jobs may not be the most attractive out there to Trotz or Tortorella or you name it, DeBoer, Paul Maurice, any of these guys who have been out of a job that were coaching before and have coached for a long time and are ranking in the top 15 in coaching. I get it. it shouldn't be to a guy like Vellucci. Like Vellucci should sit there and look at the possibility and say, you know what, this would be a huge opportunity. He's all, and not to mention he's already in the state. He's coaching across the state.
Right.
Like it's not exactly a huge move.
No, he could rent a U-Haul and drive the Pennsylvania Turnpike. It's about 5
Right.
hours.
So that's like because that's another thing that comes up. Does somebody want to move? Be close to where they previously were. That type of stuff. Like you would be starting a new life. And there's coaches who do it, and there's coaches who kind of are, no, I'm going to stick to this. Like and it's different for coaches than it is for players.
I think this is a guy who probably wants a shot to coach and is willing to move to do it.
Oh yeah. I'm not saying he's not. What I'm getting at is that there really shouldn't be anything that holds you back from hiring a guy like Mike Vellucci, except with the exception of that you feel threatened by his hockey ops experience.
Man,
like it's the truth though. That's a hire. If you don't go after this guy, the main reason, unless it is to get a coach that you feel is way more qualified,
right,
like a Trotz, the only reason you don't do this is because you have too much of an ego in your own mind that I don't want to be threatened in my job. I want to keep like it is. To me, it is.
There's also something to be said for I don't necessarily want to be the first team to give this guy a shot, because what if he sucks? Like what if it just doesn't translate?
And the problem with that thinking is there's quite literally, I think, almost no way to suck worse than what you've done in the last 2 years, that you're sitting here going, what if, like, honestly, if you're going into it afraid that an assistant that you hire is going to suck, then you don't get where you are.
So did the Flyers hit rock bottom this season?
I mean, not completely, because they didn't finish dead last, and
okay,
because
just the way you said, there's almost no way to suck worse. Like I don't disagree with you.
Like to me, I'm saying that not from a coaching standpoint. Like to me, if you've got experienced head coaches, Alain Vigneault was coaching this team at the start of the year. You've got Michel Therrien and Mike Yeo on the bench as assistants who also have head coaching experience. You fire two of them. You put Mike Yeo in the spot, and by the end of the year, Mike Yeo's telling you could have Scotty Bowman or Toe Blake coaching this team and it wouldn't win a game. Then you can't get worse with any assistant in the league, if that's the way you're talking.
Yeah, but they're going to throw a whole heap and pile of money at Nazem Kadri and Johnny Gaudreau.
They can try. Well, they can try. They can try to. I don't know that they'll even get the opportunity.
All right. But we don't have anything definitive about this Flyers head coaching search.
I'm just saying, to me, that's a guy who, like, if you're not interested in hiring that guy, ultimately, I think you feel like it's a threat to your position in the front office because of his front office experience. There's a difference between looking at him as an assistant, and we all know that the call for Jim Montgomery is probably coming at some point.
Sure.
We've heard other names too. I don't want to gloss over the fact that we haven't mentioned Rick Tocchet, who Friedman keeps bringing up, by the way. Elliot Friedman has brought up regularly that he thinks he's going to get an interview.
It's crazy. It's crazy that Rick Tocchet might be higher on other teams' lists than the Flyers.
I don't think it is. I really don't, because Chuck Fletcher has kind of always had this outside the organization mentality.
It's not Chuck Fletcher I'm worried about.
Then who are you worried about?
You know who I'm worried about. I'm worried about the people who are telling Chuck Fletcher what to do. Robert Earl Clark.
Okay, then.
And Bob Holmgren.
I'm stopping.
Paul Holmgren.
I'm stopping you right there then, because I want you to tell me right now, because John Tortorella got an interview this week. Right?
Yeah. Oh, I'd pay money to see him and Bobby Clark publicly fistfight.
No. That's not what I'm saying. The way that it's been phrased is that there are people in the organization who are really high on Tortorella.
Yeah, I know.
I wonder who.
Uh-huh.
Come on. Like, it couldn't be more obvious.
Hey, Paul.
I don't even think
Hey, Bob.
I don't think it's Paul Holmgren even. I think it's straight up, if Bobby Clark has his hands all over any decision here.
Hey, Bob.
That's who he wants.
It's not 1978 anymore, Bob.
Now, here, can I make a counter, though, in defense of Tortorella?
Yeah, sure. I don't mind torts, for the record.
Right, because I don't think that he doesn't have a pulse on today's. He does a little bit. Like there are times where he says something like awful that doesn't mesh with today's game at all.
I think half of that is him just being a devil's advocate for TV. To be honest with you,
It might be. It could be as much
because he represents the grumpy old white guy. Like
and here's the thing: it could be as much of a bit as Taka taking the phone call on TNT was when AD got fired, right? Like it could be as much of a bit as that was. But let's wait. This was the guy who tried to tell you, and this is a good transition. This is the guy who tried to tell you that Connor McDavid needs to play more defense to have any success in the playoffs.
Okay, that's it. I'm putting a halt on the coaching search talk, and we're transitioning to the playoffs. Because Connor McDavid has 29 points. What? It's been, 12 games? And Connor McDavid has
26, not 29.
Or 26, I'm sorry.
26 each for Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. We'll get into Draisaitl in a second. But
hello, McFly?
By the way, do you know what 26 points is?
A lot.
Well, yes. You know why?
Okay.
Because 26 points in 12 games, you said?
Is it less?
No. I'm saying it's in 12 games they've done this. That's exactly half of the points that the Flyers' leading scorer had this year. Sorry, I had to go there.
This really is rock bottom.
There were only 9 players on the Flyers in an 82-game season that managed 26 points. Let alone what Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl have done in 2 rounds of the playoffs.
Insane. Absolutely
and Draisaitl, I got to give Draisaitl the bigger props here for saying I'm not to take away from McDavid. McDavid's the best player in the world. I've said that before.
Right, but
Draisaitl is doing this on one leg.
Right.
He's not close to 100%, and he looks like he is even better than normal. What is he? What is he, like a transformer where the leg hurts, but something formed there that heals it magically, so he gets to play at the highest level?
You know how hockey players are the toughest of the major sport athletes?
Right.
Football, whatever, but generally speaking, I would put hockey players up there in terms of toughness.
Mm-hmm.
German hockey players, forget about it. He's literally just a Sherman tank. He is just an actual tank that does whatever he wants.
So,
what he wants to do is win.
So hold on. So I take it. Is this a series we're starting with?
Yeah, we have to.
Okay, that's fine. No, I'm just making sure. I mean, we can start with any of the 3 that are actually done.
Absolutely.
So
the Battle of Alberta did not last as long as any of us thought it was going to. I think pretty much everybody, even through 4 games, pretty much everybody had this series going 6 or 7. At least I certainly did. Instead, we got maybe the craziest 5-game series in NHL history. It was a circus. Game 1, 9-6, 5-3, 4-1, 5-3, 5-4. The scores were pretty normal after that, but that's still pretty high scoring for a playoff series. But we started with a 9-6. The only word I can use, the only word that's appropriate,
9-6. Here we go.
is barn burner. No, I wasn't even making a joke.
I know. No,
the game was just a barn burner, and I know, no pun intended, Calgary Flame, whatever, but it's a barn burner. The Saddle Dome was on fire that night.
We're sure that's not just from the fact that they scored 9 goals.
Well,
as
that's
a team themselves,
part of it.
So they wore out every feature that they've got when they score a goal.
Brady Tkachuk delirious in the crowd.
Well, I mean, his brother scored a hat trick in that game, so you can't blame him.
No, but you know who I can blame? Keith, throw your hat. Throw your hat, Keith.
What? It's his favorite hat.
It's your son's playoff hat trick. He can get it back for you. Hey, son, get me my hat back. Okay, Dad, no problem. I'm the guy who scored the hat trick. Hello?
I know. It's really funny. This has not been a good round for me.
Okay.
I've been wrong on a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I certainly didn't have Edmonton winning in 5.
I did not have Edmonton winning the series.
I don't think I did either, but I think I had it going 6 or 7. So
I had Calgary in 7, which, by the way, so there you go.
It's your toss-up.
Well, right, which means I can see either team winning the series, but I really did think it was going to take 7. It was a close series.
Yeah, it was
I mean,
a
way
fun
closer
series.
Well, because here's the thing: those 2-5-3 games that come out of it, because Edmonton wins a couple games by those types of scores. They're pretty Calgary got off to the same kind of really hot start in game 2 that they did in game 1. Like, they were off to that kind of start. Before you could blink, it was 2-0.
Right.
They just weren't able to hold the. I mean,
It was Jacob Markstrom.
Markstrom was awful in the series.
He was like, the rest of the team was fine. Like, they kept him in games. They kept things close. Like, they weren't perfect. Obviously, they could have played better. Jacob Markstrom gave up some softies.
Now, here's the thing: it was Markstrom. I'm not taking away from, because Markstrom all of a sudden went from outstanding goaltending, pretty much all regular season, and definitely had to go toe to toe in the first round of the playoffs. To, I mean, that's a goals against every single of minimum of 4. I mean, I'm not going to look it up exactly for what it was in this series. I could look up his overall playoff total, but.
I know at one point I saw that this series had the second most goals in playoff series history.
Right.
Do you know what series it was behind?
I mean, is it Flyers Penguins 2012?
Sure is.
Of course it is.
And you know what? After game 1, it felt a lot like that series. After game 3, when Milan Lucic runs Mike Smith.
Do you know what's funny, by the way, about that series, that 2012 series, now that I'm thinking of it? The thing about this series, when you're talking about the amount of goals scored, is that the first game set the tone.
Right.
9-6.
Right.
The first game of the Flyers-Penguins series that year was nothing more than a 4-3 overtime final.
I know. It was just a tight game.
Which, by all standards, is normal.
Right.
No, then you got 8-5 and 10-3 in there and stuff like you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, but then it secured back up. The last 2 games were 3-2 and 5-1. Relatively normal scores.
Relatively speaking. Okay.
I mean, yeah.
5-1 is a little bit out there, but
one of them was an empty netter, Braden Shen.
Okay, that's fair. But either way.
But yeah, it felt.
It also probably set the modern record for penalty minutes in a playoff series.
Well, and I think this one probably gave it a run for its money.
This one probably needed the 6th game that Flyers Penguins series got to get there.
Yeah, because it was getting there, man.
Well, let's put it this way. If Leon Draisaitl had more points in this series, like McDavid had more points in the first round series against LA, Draisaitl had more points in this series. He had 17.
And he also had every single Calgary Flames stick hacking across his ankle for games 3, 4, and 5.
If he gets one more game, if Calgary wins that game in overtime instead, if he gets one more game, the record for most points in a playoff series was 19.
Oh, wow. He was going to do it.
Well, and here's the thing. This is what makes it so impressive. He gets 17 in 5. Mario Lemieux got 17 in 6.
Wow.
Gretzky got 18 in 6.
Wow.
And then I think it was Rick Middleton has the record at 19.
Here's
but
the
it
thing.
took 7.
Here's the thing, though. And Leon Draisaitl won't make the trade.
Okay.
If Calgary wins that game in overtime, they win the series.
Ooh, that's interesting.
100%. Because,
Okay.
I mean, you're like, yeah, 100%. Because that series was so swingy that a swing like that, if Calgary had swung back, they were rolling.
Calgary needed to take. There were 2 swings where Calgary needed to take the momentum, and they didn't. One being, look, your season's on the line. You need that overtime game when it's a toss-up.
Right.
But when they tied they tied game 4 on probably the flukiest goal I think I've ever seen.
Yeah.
They needed to win that game, and they gave up the game winner with under 3 minutes to go.
Yep.
Or with a little over 3 minutes to go.
Yep.
That can't happen when you're already trailing in the series, and too many times in the playoffs, 3-1 going down 3-1 feels like a bit of a death sentence too, because there's a lot to overcome in the following 3 games to put together a 3-game winning streak.
You got to beat a very good team 3 times in a row.
Well, and it only gets like the reason why we still, as like when we do Flyer stuff, why we still marvel about 2010 and the Boston series is because the further into the playoffs you get, the harder it gets to mount that kind of a comeback.
Right, and that was in the second round.
You might be able to, and I think there are teams that actually that haven't finished the job completely, but that have gone from 3-0 to 3-3.
Right.
And get it to a game 7, and you're going, wow, that's amazing that this is even possible. Right?
Yep.
Like, But in the first round, you're still competing with teams that may have just barely gotten into the playoffs. That like you don't, that can have something where that underlying injury from all the extra games that you played with full, guys.
Making the first round of the playoffs is a lot like community college. It's kind of high school plus. The
Well,
first round is kind of regular season plus.
there's a lot of teams that end up on a level playing field because they're not necessarily elite, but they're not necessarily like they're not bad.
Right.
Like the thing that also makes comebacks like that impressive in the second round or beyond is that once you fall behind in a series like that, now you've got guys who are playing hurt. Like now you're too far into the playoffs that you've got guys playing hurt.
Right. Like everyone knows Leon Draisaitl's ankle is hurt. They're going after it.
The thing that kind of gets me about that series too, because the group chat was really going back and forth during game one.
Well, yeah.
It's a tough series to kind of be active during to an extent because we can't deny it's the latest series in the bunch.
Yeah.
It was a little
It's
tricky.
getting the last start.
Right. So it's
every night.
So as you're getting closer to the end of these games, it's a little hard to do this. At least to communicate with a bunch of people who are all on different schedules.
Right.
I'm definitely still sitting up.
Central Standard Time is coming in clutch. I'll tell you that much.
That's for sure, and it'll continue. It will continue to for you during the next two rounds, I'm sure. But the thing, because I said it right off the bat in game one, if you've got Connor McDavid, the game is not over.
No,
it's never over.
Nope.
That's the thing, though. I don't know if I felt that way for Calgary.
Okay.
Like when Calgary would fall behind in a game, I'm not sitting there going, oh, and it's funny. They actually did mount the comeback in game 4 to get it tied, but
their top line did produce, right? Kachuk, Gaudreau,
they did. To me, it was the lack of. It's not that the lack of production, because those guys did produce in multiple games. It wasn't just they came back in game 4, game 5. Those guys actually were giving you something because Gaudreau scored his first goal of the series in that one. Like you're getting stuff from the right players. I think Lindholm had a goal in that game. That line was doing what it had to do. The thing was that I just didn't get the sense, even with how good that top line was during the course of the season, I didn't get the sense that you could sit there confidently and say, you know what, like when you talk about having a McDavid, it's just never over.
Right. And there is this otherworldly plane that only a few players inhabit, right? Yes. And Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl happen to be two of them that can do it on the same team.
Sure.
It's absolutely insane because we've talked about Sidney Crosby, we've talked about Connor McDavid doing it, Leon Draisaitl doing it. Another player that can do it is a player that they're going to be facing in the Eastern Conference Finals. Because I have absolutely
in the West
or in the Western Conference Finals. I'm sorry, because I have on more than one occasion watched Nathan MacKinnon take over a game.
I want to sit there and talk before we get into the West Final completely because I want to stick to. I did want to jump to the other series in the second round.
Yeah. I was just transitioning over to Colorado,
so I don't want to just jump into Western Conference Final preview right now. By the way,
Colorado had to be nervous.
Oh, I'm sure. By the way, the only series I got right.
Okay.
Perfectly right.
I was close. I had Colorado in 5. I didn't quite give Nashville enough credit, and I'm not going to lie to you. When Nashville won
St.
game,
Louis?
Or St. Louis, rather, yeah. And I'm not going to lie. Yeah, you're right. When St. Louis won game 5, I got a little nervous. Right? Because Colorado kind of has that reputation that Washington had for a couple of years with that second round hump.
I was nervous for in game 6. I was nervous for them with impending overtime.
Yeah.
There's 20 seconds left in regulation, and you think overtime's coming, and I'm going, I don't like this for Colorado. I mean,
that's a game that if you lose, you're in tough spots for the series. Just mentally.
Like I looked at that and I went, because there were a lot of people that believed that series was going 7 when it went back to St. Louis, and I'm like, you know what? If it goes overtime, I'm buying in now. Okay. I'm really buying into that possibility because this is anything can happen territory. And, Man, I mean, here's the thing. The night before, Edmonton had won in overtime because McDavid scored the goal. So I also was in my mind thinking, if Colorado's going to do it, it's going to have to be Nathan MacKinnon.
Right.
Right?
Instead.
Or maybe not.
Maybe it's Darren Helm.
Well, no, I would have picked another star. Like I was at because if not Nathan McKinnon, then what? Maybe Cale Makar. Like
Right.
it's gonna be somebody big. Maybe Gabe Landeskog, the captain of the team. Rantanen hasn't really scored in the playoffs.
He's been quiet.
He's been the setup guy. So I would even Gabe Landeskog, who as the captain of that team has gone through hell and back as, somebody who's been there for probably the longest, of that core group. That you sit here and you go, because guess what we're not talking about? Yes, this is Nathan McKinnon's first trip to a conference final. It's also Gabe Landeskog's. And we're not talking enough about that.
Right.
Like, that's a guy who, I mean, have we actually, because even, Darren Helm, yes, we're going to get into him for a second here. But Darren Helm at least has won before.
Yeah,
because he was around long enough in Detroit to go back to the previous cup that they've won.
And you know what? I do want to give Darren Helm credit because he didn't make the St. Louis fans sit through a whole intermission just to score early in overtime. He gave them the opportunity to go home a little early.
That whole play,
it's very polite.
Was crazy. Because nothing about it is actually really crisp. Like Logan O'Connor makes a pass across ice that goes off the boards, and he's just there in open space. And in fairness, in fairness to him, there's 5 seconds left. Let her go.
Right.
By all means, you don't.
If you're at home, every fan's going shoo.
I mean, you might as well. There's 5 seconds left.
Yep.
By the way, great call on the broadcast.
Oh,
Brendan Burke is really good. I like him a lot.
Did you hear the radio? Did you hear the radio call?
I believe I did. Yes.
Oh my God.
You know what? You know what it is actually? I think I'd heard the Colorado radio, and I want to hear same thing. I heard the Edmonton radio for McDavid's. I want to hear the other side too.
You want to hear that? Yeah.
I need the away radio too.
You're a masochist, huh?
No, please, you know what happens here. I watch losses on a regular basis. I kind of need to hear both sides of the equation. I love compilation videos like that where they play all of them. Here's how it was on TV. Here's the home radio call. Here's the away radio call. We got all of them. I like all of it.
You're a sick man.
No, I'm a broadcaster.
You enjoy hearing people's pain. You're a sick man.
No, because I like it for the good of the positive radio call too. Like I like the whole picture.
All right,
broadcast junkie. That's what I would say. I guess.
Colorado, St. Louis. Who you got?
Oh no! Next one now.
Colorado Colorado Edmonton. Who you got? Let's go.
So we're doing this right now. We're gonna go back. Okay.
Yeah. I think we do conference by conference here.
All right. I am going to stand by everything that I've gone through so far.
Okay.
I've got Colorado in the final. I've had Colorado in the final from the very beginning of the playoffs.
I had Calgary in the final. Rip.
Okay, there you go. But I've had Colorado all along, so why would I change it now? I do not think that this is going to be an easy series.
No.
This is, to be honest, this now needs to be the series that we thought the Battle of Alberta was going to be.
Well,
this needs distance. This one screams 7 games to me.
I think this series depends on Mike Smith. And
heavily.
And if he finally runs out of gas, I could see Colorado winning this in 5.
5 or 6, maybe 6 more.
But I don't think that's going to happen. I think the Oilers will. I think the Oilers steal at least 1 in Colorado.
I'm really curious to see, especially from the very start of it in Game 1. I'm really curious to see if this turns out to be as much of a track meet as the Battle of Alberta turned into to an extent with the high-powered offenses, because they both can score.
I'm so glad that Colorado took care of business, because then everyone just gets 3 full days to rest.
Oh, yeah.
An extra full day off to rest.
Yes.
And Game 1 should be a track meet, like you said. But here's the thing, though. In a track meet, I'm not betting against Connor McDavid.
Well, right. Well, and here's the thing. Don't tell me. I know, you pulled out. You already played the Mike Smith card here, and that's fair to do. I mean, the guy let in a shorthanded goal from center ice and threw his hands up in the air like somebody else was at fault for it.
Like he got bumped, right?
Right. I'm not completely convinced with Darcy Kemper either.
I don't disagree with you.
He's had some moments. I don't know that he has completely stolen you a game yet. The way that, if
Tarasenko aside, I think Edmonton has better shooters than St. Louis.
Yes.
And St. Louis made him look mortal.
Right. Like,
I'm nervous if I'm a Colorado fan.
I just think you're getting like it's almost unfair to do this. I know why we're all doing this. It's the easiest thing to do. I even tweeted afterwards because it's the easiest way to go with this and the easiest angle to take. Yes, it's McDavid McKinnon. It's the matchup that everybody's kind of been waiting for.
And that's how the NHL should be marketing
it. Both guys, first conference final. Somebody's getting to their first Stanley Cup final. One of these guys, because I said it when I did my spot on 97.3 this week. I think we've been waiting. Crosby got to a cup final pretty quickly in his career. Ovechkin didn't until 2018.
Right.
And it was a big deal just for him to make it, let alone win it. It's going to be a big deal when McKinnon or McDavid make their first cup final appearance.
Well, and one of them's guaranteed to.
And one of them's going to. And which is why it's a big deal that this is their first conference final.
I agree.
You can go, well, one of them's got to win. So somebody's getting here for the first time. I think it's unfair that we're not able to talk about everybody way more because it's not just McKinnon and McDavid. Draisaitl's been off the charts. Good.
Nazem Kadri has been fantastic.
On Colorado's side, it's McKinnon, Landeskog, Rantanen, Kadri, Makar, like
Devon Taves has had a great playoffs. They're just incredible.
And at some point, you cut it off. Like at Devon Taves, I kind of cut it off from the superstar level, and I go, "You're just a really good player that fits into his role perfectly."
Yeah, that's valid.
Like you're just a really good player. It's even, I was about to say it's even a good coaching match. Edmonton's still using an interim coach technically. But not for long. But here's the thing. How long has Bednar waited to get to this point?
Well, and that's why I mentioned a little earlier in our coaching conversation.
Right.
If they hadn't gotten over the hump, I don't necessarily know if Jared Bednar gets fired just because they've been such a good team over the last couple of years. But at some point, somebody's got to pay the price for that.
Yeah,
right.
You start asking questions.
Yep.
So
could Barry Trotz get us over the hump?
And then on Edmonton's side, sure, we're not talking about Draisaitl as much as we could, obviously, in that because you're saying McKinnon, McDavid,
right?
But love him or hate him, Evander Kane's been a scoring machine in the playoffs, and
he's been a monster.
And in the last series, in particular, look at Zach Hyman coming out and lighting it up every night. I mean, he scored in every game in the series, and
I'm not surprised because that series was physical and chippy, and Zach Hyman loves that kind of stuff.
Well, and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins had a good series.
Yep.
Defensively, you're getting performances.
Taylor Yamamoto had a good series too.
You know who I thought had an incredible series, and defensively, I think the focus for Edmonton falls to Darnell Nurse, and there's definitely
and he was solid,
and there's definitely focus on Duncan Keith as a guy who's gone through this multiple times. The guy who's impressed me a lot. Evan Bouchard.
Okay.
He's been really good in this playoff.
I really thought you were about to say Cody Ceci.
No. I think because Bouchard was a high draft pick. And
right.
It's all coming together. He's emerging in these. He's emerging the way if the last round it was ironically enough against Calgary. If the last round it was you can't ignore Jay Gottinger anymore. He's the guy now. Bouchard's got a high
Bouchard's
place.
the same way.
Bouchard has probably solidified himself as a top 3 defenseman on that team now.
Okay. And for a long time that wasn't saying too much, but
no, but Cody Ceci is what he is, right?
Yeah.
Duncan Keith's not going to be there forever. Darnell Nurse is pretty much the number one guy.
He is going to be there forever.
And signed the big contract.
Right.
But Bouchard's coming along on such a trajectory right now that I'm like, he's impressed me so much in this thing. And then, it's because it's funny, goaltending wise, it's not even close to the two teams with the best goaltending from a collective standpoint in the year. But, that's okay.
There's only one elite goalie remaining in these playoffs.
Pretty much. I mean, I'd be curious. Well, no, there's not.
Healthy. Oh, you're right.
There's not. I mean,
you're right.
I can't guarantee.
You're right.
I can't guarantee that there's 2 that are going to play in the East Final.
Right.
But there are 2 elite goaltenders left in this play.
All right. So give me a prediction here for the Western Conference Finals, and then we'll flip over and talk about the East.
Colorado in 7.
Okay.
It's going to be a great series, though. Lots of offense.
You know what? these playoffs have just been fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
We have gotten some incredible stories. We've gotten some really good kind of cliche things happen in a good way. This feels a lot like a return to normalcy in terms of the playoffs and kind of how it all feels. And it's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing.
Oh, it's been so much fun to watch.
Connor McDavid's going to make the Stanley Cup Finals.
Okay. Listen.
And I say it like that on purpose because I think it's Connor McDavid and co.
Okay.
I think he is going to do... I think there's a chance he gets close to that playoff points record that we just touched on with Draisaitl hitting in the second round. 19 points. I think if this series goes 6 or 7, Connor McDavid could very easily challenge that number.
So
he's also on pace to do Gretzky-like things, by the way. I don't know if we've mentioned that.
Can I make a bold prediction now based on what you're talking?
Okay.
If the Oilers do make the Cup final, because I don't know if there's a way for this to happen without it.
McDavid wins Art Ross, or McDavid wins the Conn Smythe no matter what.
McDavid might win the Conn Smythe no matter what.
I agree. I 100% agree. And it depends on what elite goalie is on the other side and how that series looks. But yes, I agree with you.
I believe it's something that hasn't happened since Jaguar in 03. That was the last time a player on the losing team won a Conn Smythe, if it were to happen that way.
I believe you're correct. And I don't know if a skater has ever done that.
That's a good question.
Right? Because I know
you're thinking of Hextall, too.
I know Ron Hextall did it, right? And there's not a whole lot of Conn Smythe winners out of the losing team.
Wait, I think Reggie Leach did it.
Did he?
In the losing effort, yeah.
That's funny. The Flyers have a lot of history with the Conn Smythe and losing, apparently.
But bottom line.
Okay, so I have the Oilers
really
in 7.
Believe that, but I really believe that if he makes a Cup final, win or lose, he might be your Conn Smythe winner.
I don't disagree with you at all.
Because he's having that incredible of a playoff that I think that you have no choice but to acknowledge.
You have to consider it. Yeah.
You have to acknowledge it.
Oilers in 7.
Okay, and look, like I've always said all
along,
it's
the coin flip.
If it's 7, if I feel like it's going to go 7, it means I can see either side. And I really, to be honest, the last 2 games of that series are what turned me on that.
Yep.
I think in general, I would have just said Colorado. I would have moved on. I would have made it quick and easy. Actually, if Calgary would have found a way to win that series, I probably would have said Colorado in 6.
I do also want to mention real quick before we move on. Yes, I do indeed believe that Blake Coleman scored and that it's a conspiracy to get Connor McDavid through.
I don't know about through. Okay, I cannot vouch for that. I believe that I do believe it was a conspiracy to get that game overtime.
Okay.
It was close enough to the end of the game, which, by the way, I find foolish. The team's up 3-1, and you got 2 of the best players in the world on the other side that you're going to give an empty net situation to, with 2 minutes left.
Right.
I think that they might be able to find a way to score a goal in a series that had a ton of goal scoring.
Yeah, but you still got to do it. Like
I would have more appreciated, like, to be honest, if you really wanted McDavid to make the next round and did it in a conspiracy way, you would have had the extra home game.
Yeah, you're right.
Then you would have said, we're setting this up so that he has to win it at home.
That's fair.
So I think that's a little extreme. I get where people are coming from with that. I do also agree that was a good goal. There was no distinct kicking motion whatsoever on that play.
No.
I'm sorry. I almost there were a lot of people pulling out receipts.
From the overhead angle, I will give this the credit it needs. From the overhead angle, it looks like he thrusts his leg towards the goal line a little bit.
My issue is he looks like he's starting to fall over.
I agree. No, I agree.
You're losing control of what your body's doing, and it hits off his skate.
On the whole, I am in agreement that this is a goal. But that one particular angle, I will agree that it does look a little bit like he is pushing his foot forward to attempt to kick the puck.
So there were people who kept receipts. Like, there were people who were pulling up videos of other calls this year.
Yeah, do you know
the one
was the big egregious one?
Well, one was an Ottawa one because he turns his skate and literally directs it. But there was another one. I know. I didn't see it right away, but it was later. I saw it, and I don't remember which game it was from.
Yeah, I can't remember.
No, but do you know which one came to mind for me? And I could have pulled up the video. I didn't do it because I wasn't going to harp on it. But like it's not a big deal to me. Like, it happened. It's over. It's done with. Edmonton still could have won the game in overtime. there was enough time left to tie the game and then win it.
Right.
Let's be real. And they were up in the series 3-1, so they probably were moving on anyway.
Right.
But do you remember the goal back? And this is a while ago. This is pre-Alain Vigneault getting fired in the Flyer season.
Goal, no, I don't remember. Okay, I blacked that out.
Well, there was a goal against Toronto, or that Toronto scored in November. William Nylander.
I think I do remember.
It went off the toe of his foot. He didn't exactly kick it. His foot moved like a kick later after it hit it. But
he definitely tried to kick it.
Well, he tried to direct it. He moved his foot knowing it was the only part of his body that was going to get on the puck.
Right.
And that was called no goal on the ice and overturned to a good goal.
Right. Yeah, and the fact that this was called a good goal and overturned to no goal is what got me. Like, if they had called it no goal on the ice...
Hang on a minute. Hello, gray area calling.
Kevin, are you trying to imply that there
nobody knows what this is?
That there is occasionally some inconsistencies with how the NHL makes calls?
I just thought that was a pretty bad one.
Yeah, you wouldn't be trying to imply that, would you? That would be... No, come on. Colin Campbell doesn't. No, never.
Oh, what? I'm sorry. Am I going to get it? What, am I supposed to get an email later about the fine that I get for that, right?
Or maximum allowable under the CBA?
I mean, I can pay it. I would appreciate it if I didn't have to, though. But I would,
Well, the equivalent for you would be like $1.50. You're fine.
Okay, fair. I can do $1.50. All right. On to the Eastern Conference really quick.
Just skip some avocado toast. You'll be okay. All right, so East Coast, we got to talk about the series that has ended first. We'll talk about the Game 7 on Monday in just a minute. I don't know if anybody on planet Earth outside the Tampa Bay organization was expecting this result.
The overall end result, yes. The team that won, maybe not.
Right, but I'm talking about an absolute. That's an ass whooping. There's no other way to say it. Florida, okay, they kept things competitive for the most part, but they were never a threat to win the series. Did they hold the lead at any point?
Yes. In Game 1, I know they led. Because
they did win. They held the lead in Game 1 for 2 minutes and 21 seconds.
They might have at one other point in time, too.
Okay. I'm gonna look, but Game 1 they held the lead for 2.5 minutes. Game 2, Corey Perry scored first. Game 3, Corey Perry scored first. Game 4, the Panthers didn't score at all. Right. Florida Panthers held a lead for 2 minutes and 21 seconds in that entire series, and it was in the first period of Game 1.
Okay, so here. You want my take on the series then? I mean,
yeah.
I know you do because we're doing a show.
Absolutely.
I'm not going to talk about Game 4. I'm not even going to talk about Game 3 because those two games, in the grand scheme of things, didn't matter to me. The series ended on Ross Colton's goal with 4 seconds left.
Yes.
That's it. End of conversation, end of story.
Yep.
Because everything lined up perfectly for Florida in that game at that point. Okay, you know what? I don't know that you win Game 2, and if you lose Game 2 in overtime, yes, I probably feel the same way, but it was overtime. I may change my thought about that if you come back in Game 3 and have a competitive game. You just showed you could get them to overtime.
Right. Game 2... For game 2 at home to end like that,
you make a mistake like that and essentially stop playing in the final 10 seconds, assuming overtime, and get beat by a team that has been there, done that 2 years in a row. It's over.
That's a spirit breaker. That's one of those things that this team is going to change. Right, Claude Giroux is probably not coming back. They have some other names that they have to re-sign, move around. This is the last run for this particular group for the Florida Panthers.
Yes.
But Jonathan Huberdeau is never going to let that happen again. Barkov is never going to let that happen again.
They shouldn't.
Right. The guys who were there, the guys who are staying, the guys who are that core are never going to let that happen again.
Yeah. That's...
Because you're right. That goal, Ross Colton single-handedly broke the Florida Panthers.
Well, and here's the thing. Competitive series in the sense that, like, I go back to Game 1. You're right. They barely, I know they barely led in Game 1. Right? Like, they led for 2 minutes. They get the first goal.
By the way, Corey Perry scored Tampa's first goal in the first 3 games of that series.
Oh, wait a second.
Corey Perry was electric for that.
Hold on. You said they led for 2 minutes, right?
Yeah.
No, that's not true.
Is that not true?
No, because it was 16-22 of the second period. So they led.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry.
But then again, so Game 1, you're going to the third period, tied 1-1. Game 2, you're in the third period late, and it's 1-1. Game 4, you took 49 shots on goal and lost 2-0 with one of the goals being an empty netter.
Right.
Like, it's competitive, but you do not have that extra gear. It's like Florida does not have that extra gear.
Right. They don't have that next level.
Well, because if that's the case, you wouldn't lose the win a period, win a game, third period of game 1.
Yep.
You wouldn't give up the goal with 4 seconds left in a game that should go to overtime. And I can't even sit there and say anything about game 4 because of the fact that game 4,
Andrei Vasilevsky was absurd.
I believe the words that I used were, this is elimination game Vasilevsky or playoff clincher Vasilevsky. Like, you're getting that guy that night tonight.
Andrei Vasilevsky is the biggest threat to Connor McDavid for the Conn Smythe Trophy at the halfway point of the playoffs.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean,
I think it's a 2-horse race. If their teams make it, those are the guys.
The reason why you feel that way from Tampa's standpoint is because of the fact that there's not exactly. I mean, who's the biggest guy who's emerged for them from a point production or goal scoring standpoint? Is it Corey Perry?
Quite frankly, it's probably Corey Perry. Right. Like I said, he scored the first goal in that series in the first 3 games.
What, 37-year-old Corey Perry? Like,
who cares, man?
No, the guy who probably made the smartest decision in the world when he said, if you can't beat him, join him.
Oh, yeah.
2 years running, losing in the Cup final.
Yep.
And, man, I want to go back and see. Like, I hope there's audio of what was said to him by John Cooper in that handshake line last year.
By the way, Pat Maroon, 14 straight playoff wins. Because he's got that St. Louis year in too.
John Cooper said it after the whole thing because he even said winning, this many in a row anyway, winning that many series in a row, which they're up to 10. He goes, 10 in a row,
crazy,
is incredible. Yeah. He's done it 14 times.
14. He's got a whole extra 4 here. Like, it's insane. So okay,
they're approaching, and I got to give you credit for this because you turn around and right after they won in the first round, we're like, okay, it feels like they're going to go back.
They're rolling.
They're running it back.
Yep.
And I'm on board with enough of that now. I stand by
sweeping the President's Trophy winner is enough to convince you.
Sweeping the President's Trophy winner without Braden Point, without getting much goal scoring at all from your top guys. I think they finally got some scoring from those guys later. I mean,
by the way, Vasilevsky 49 save shutout in Game 7.
That's all you need to know.
And Tampa didn't score until 6 minutes into the third period, so he played the first full 2 periods shutout hockey. Well, relative.
They thought they did
goals that counted.
Right.
So Andrei Vasilevsky had to be sharp because he didn't have any margin of error.
Which, by the way, the one was right.
Right.
The one off the faceoff was definitively right.
No, I agree.
And then the only reason I was surprised by the other one was because they didn't have a good angle to really say it went out of play.
And they might have had an angle that we don't have.
I agree that by common sense, it hit out of play and shot back in. I get it, but I don't know that was as conclusive
unless you can prove it.
As the way that the hand clearly moved the puck.
Right.
I agree. Even though his hand is on his stick, it's still the glove that is directing it. You kind of have no choice but to acknowledge that.
But was Matt Duchene offsides? Only by about 1.5 miles. He was in a different zip code. So there's really not a whole lot to talk about. Tampa is doing Tampa things and has decided that and they took 7 games against Toronto to get their feet wet, get warmed up, remember what time of year it is. And now they're sitting here going, all right.
Well, and this is the thing.
We're back.
And I don't know for whoever plays them next round, if they make the final, whoever plays them in the final, Toronto did something in the first round that doesn't happen a lot to this team. They were vulnerable.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
When you have
Toronto had them hurt.
When you have them, and you'll get this one as much as anybody because I know you watch this type of stuff. If you have them on the mat, don't let them get up.
Right.
You got to finish the job. If they're down, don't let them up.
Yep.
And Toronto let them up. And then what? I mean, that last series, that's the 15-second knockout right there. I mean, right?
I'm so proud of you for trying to make UFC references. It's hilarious.
I hear you. I'm saying. Well, I mean, that's as much of a boxing reference as it is. You
Okay.
know. But am I right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's your TKO right there.
Right.
Like, because what it turned out to not be a fight. I mean,
Right.
it's just not much of a fight when you go to if you're getting swept in the second round.
Yeah, and
It's not much of a competition.
we would be remiss if we didn't mention Claude Giroux here because he just looked so sad. He looked man, and I'm not laughing at the pain that he's feeling, but man, he looked so sad.
And he's as responsible for it as anyone else is. Like the whole team kind of just disappeared outside of. I mean, the one guy I'll give credit to because he did everything he could. It's not Sergei Bobrovsky.
No, nope.
Everybody wants to sit there and play the playoff Bob card. It wasn't Sergei Bobrovsky this time.
He proved himself. He belonged.
It wasn't. Not this time.
You went up against probably the best team of the Cap era.
Absolutely.
In their third, like they're in full swing. Like
the way I described it when I was on the air this week, because I even said this is the closest thing we've seen to a true dynasty. And I even said there's been great teams that we want to consider that, and I left, one of the teams I left out that I know won much more consistently because I know Chicago won 3 Stanley Cups in the course of 6 years. I get that. I went back to Detroit because I go, they won back to back. They got a third one in there that wasn't that far in the future. Like you're still talking a good 3 and 7 where 2 of them were back to back. It's the Yzerman era. Like you can kind of pin it down to a group. By the way, quick segue, not to get off track.
Yeah.
The trailer for this unrivaled special that ESPN's going to have on the Red Wings and the Avalanche.
It's going to be good.
Oh my goodness, I can't wait for this.
ESPN's production values are pretty good. Yeah.
So I can't wait to see this. But because it's all those players that we're talking about.
Right.
But to me, like I look at those guys and like the way like I look at those teams and those teams that we would consider dynasties or try to consider dynasties. I don't know if you really can call them true dynasties. Like they're close, they're very close. They are the dominant teams of that particular time frame, but I don't know if they are I don't know if we've seen one like this since the Islanders of the early 80s.
Are the 2000 to 2015-ish or 2020-ish New England Patriots, is that a dynasty to you? I'm just out of curiosity. I know you're just talking about hockey. I'm just trying to define what you think a dynasty is.
Yes, because there's 2 central figures to the whole thing.
Totally. I agree. I think to be a dynasty, you have to do at least 3 and 4 or 4 and 6.
Okay, and so in fairness, it's not consecutively, but the Edmonton team of the 80s falls in line too. 4 and 5 is very much a dynasty.
Oh, absolutely.
And then they won another one in 1992.
Right.
So like it's not like there's 5 of them in the course of an 8-year span.
Right.
I mean, look, we're talking about a team that's made the conference finals 6 out of 8 years. And in the 6 years, I mean, let's put it this way. Do you want to run down the 6 years exactly? Cup final, 1 game short, first round sweep, 2 cups.
Yep. And then the one year they missed, just everyone was horrifically injured.
Yep.
And then I don't remember what happened the other year, but I imagine was that the year Steven Stamkos broke his leg?
I'm sorry, I threw the sweep in there because I'm talking about the conference final appearances.
You're right.
The years they didn't make the conference final was the year they got swept, and yes, the year.
And then the year got hurt. Everyone was horrifically injured.
So the six conference finals are make a cup final, missed by a game. So two Stanley Cup wins and this.
So when do we rename the Jack Adams the John Cooper Award?
By the way, I think I had said something about because we were talking about this last show, and I mentioned that coaches don't last for that long, and I said Cooper was the coach for the last 8 years. He was the coach for 8 years before he won a cup.
Right.
He's got 10 under his belt with this team.
If John Cooper ever leaves Tampa Bay, 31 general managers should pick up the phone and fire their coach.
Yeah, pretty much.
I'm not joking.
I know.
I'm literally not joking. We should get an entire clean slate, fantasy draft the coaches, NHL 22 style. Like,
by the way,
everyone should be fired.
By the way, your case to rename the Jack Adams the John Cooper Award doesn't hold any water because he would actually have to win it. And apparently he doesn't get any respect to do it because, as we've said on this show before, it's the award for the coach that overachieves with his team. Pretty much, right? I mean, that's the joke that we've made. It's that the Jack Adams is the award for the coach who overachieves the
Oh,
most.
right. And the
That's
problem
the
is he
most
set the expectations so
right.
high
So
that
he
it's
doesn't
just
do anything. The team is
right.
just good, so they go, okay, that's how it's going to be then, right?
It's
Like,
boring at this point, right?
so
It's
I'm
like
not
Patrice
surprised.
Bergeron with the Selke. Like, he probably
but he's
should be a finalist every year, but some years he's not just because he's so expected to be
No,
excellent.
no. He's been a finalist. What, 8 years in a row?
I guess that's fair.
Something like that, and he's probably gonna win it for the 5th time.
Well, especially if there's that inkling that he might be done, he'll definitely get one more as a lifetime achievement.
I'm not convinced yet, but it's close. I mean,
I agree.
Nothing's been said yet, so I won't be convinced until he actually says it. But
I think he's retired unless Quebec City gets a team.
oh wow, well that's not happening this year. So
Right, exactly.
I don't believe that because of the fact that basically I thought he said he's either only playing in Boston or he's retiring. So
yeah,
he's going to stay in Boston and finish it out.
I think if he plays, it'll be in Boston. I agree.
All right. Well, do we want to get to this other series while we have?
Yeah, we have
a few
one
more minutes.
We have one series left. There is a Game 7 on Monday between the New York Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. Whew. And there's so many teams. And this series just has been a great playoff series.
It really has. I mean,
this is your standard Eastern Conference. Going back to the Patrick division. This would be a Patrick division series, right? Like going back in the day, it's fantastic.
Yeah. Here's the thing with the other series that we've talked about already. It's really hard to argue because at this point in time now, the 4 series have all gone different lengths.
Yep.
Someone swept. You had one that was done in 5, one that was done in 6. The one that finished in 6 ended in such a way that it was dramatic. It feels like you were that close to 7.
Right.
So
Darren Helm scores with 5 seconds left.
So it lived up to the hype. The Battle of Alberta lived up to the hype in game, but the length, like we all thought it was going longer than that. And
we all wish we had gotten a 6th or a 7th game.
Well,
there.
It was just the way that everything broke, though.
Right.
Like Calgary was right there. The games were incredibly competitive. It just didn't end that way. Like,
right.
Like it's that thing. So this is the series that I think has given us everything we expected. Of course, it was not the series that I had going 7. I had it going 6.
Right.
Carolina did everything in their power in Game 6 to look as awful as humanly possible for parts of that game. I mean, did they turn it on later and get beat by a good goaltender? Of course they did.
Yeah.
Like they were a shooting gallery at different points and turned it on. But the first period, Antti Ranta, thank you for playing tonight. I mean,
yep.
Awful game and that's why I think Carolina's still going to win the series, because I think that now, first of all, I don't know why they are the way they are.
Well, are you talking about the fact that they have 2 things are true about the Carolina Hurricanes? 1, they have not lost at home.
That's the first part.
2, they have not won on the road.
And I, for the life of me, cannot figure out why they are like that. Like, why they are so different. Like, I can understand if you haven't won on the road or have not lost at home and you're getting some breaks and it's
2
close,
words.
but you're doing it. But
2.5 words with a parenthesis in there.
Okay.
Rod Brindamore.
Okay.
You get line matching at home.
You do.
I think this series is so close and so tight and so competitive that is literally the difference right now.
Line matching to me was not the reason they lost Game 6, though.
I agree. No, I agree.
Like, to be honest, if we're being real, I was shocked that they even made the goalie change, because on one hand, I get why you would do it. If you felt like the game was starting to get out of reach, yes, you're looking for some momentum changes there. But it's out of reach, then rest Ranta for Game 7.
Well, and I think that's the motivation.
And maybe that's the motivation. But it got to 2-0, and I'm sitting here going, well, you can't pull him right now because you got to think you have a shot. So call your timeout.
Right.
Do something. You got to do something. This game's getting out of hand on you. Your goaltenders let in 2 really soft goals. I mean, just 2 brutally soft goals to start the game.
Well,
I mean, everything from there, I have no problem with. I mean, they gave up 3 goals after that. One's on a 5-on-3. One was a backhander that I don't know if he could even have a prayer to stop it.
As of 5 days ago, which is the latest update I can find.
Okay.
Frederik Andersen was practicing with the team.
I hope that they think they're going to have him for the next round.
I wonder if they think they're going to have him for Monday.
So here's the question, though, that I like. the best way I can look at this series, the question I got asked on the air, the first question I got asked about the playoffs anyway, was which team is better equipped to take on and compete with Tampa Bay?
Carolina.
My answer was, very diplomatically, I guess, Carolina's the better team to be competitive with Tampa Bay. But I think that the Rangers have the one X factor, which is the goaltender.
Shesterkin. Yeah.
Because if you're looking for the goaltender who can take care of Tampa Bay, I think it's Shesterkin.
Man, he's been otherworldly. Like he has been. Like we've talked about Vasilevsky, and he's been incredible
and
too.
You can't deny, back to the wall, he had the best game he's had in the series.
Igor Shesterkin has been nothing less than stellar for the New York Rangers.
He was outstanding.
We've talked about McDavid being the Conn Smythe finalist for the Oilers, and we've talked about Vasilevsky being the Conn Smythe finalist for Tampa.
Shesterkin
for the Rangers.
Shesterkin has been living up to his Hart Trophy nomination.
1,000%. He has played
and
incredible hockey.
You're right. If that's the case, and again, if by some chance, I don't think it's going to happen this way, but if by some chance we got an Oilers Rangers Cup final, I think McDavid's in the driver's seat for the Conn Smythe win or lose.
Yeah.
And,
well, I don't know, man. If Shesterkin drags him to a cup.
Yeah, well then
come on.
Yeah, okay. Well, see, here's the thing. Then I think that Edmonton would be winning the cup.
If McDavid comes out of that series, say that series goes 7 games, and he comes out with 2 goals and 2 assists, and the Rangers win, and they win the final 1-0. You're telling me Shesterkin's not getting the Conn Smythe? Get out of here.
Right. And here's the thing. Obviously, and not to go back to the West with it, but Edmonton's the one team that carries the hopes of an entire country.
Right. I don't necessarily know how much they care about that, how much they feel that pressure, but.
Well, no. But he's Canadian. He knows.
That's fair.
He carries the weight of that from '93. So let's be real about this.
Back on this Carolina Ranger series,
right? Because now we have to start looking ahead to whomever comes out of that, and then from there, right?
So we'll play the what if game. Let's start with Carolina because they have that stellar record at home, and I'm not really willing to bet against them at this point. Right. And they have the home ice for Game 7. So if Carolina goes up against Tampa, where are you at on that?
Well, all right. So let me do this as the best way I can do this.
Yeah.
In my mind, I just don't feel like I don't see a way that Carolina loses this game because they've been that good at home.
I agree.
They've now been involved in 2 7-game series. When they played Boston, they obviously looked like the better team in Game 7 after not at all looking like the best team in Game 6.
Right.
And I think you're getting the same equation here. It's going to need to be Shesterkin's absolute best if they're going to finally find a way to beat that team at home.
Okay.
If that's the case. It's going to absolutely have to be their best. But I think it's a lot closer than the other ones. I still give it to Carolina for now. Carolina was my pick going in. I give it to Carolina for now. Now you're asking me,
moving on, who they play. Yeah, how that series goes.
I don't think it matters.
Really? You think Tampa's just steamrolling, huh?
I got Tampa in 6 no matter who makes it.
Wow. Okay.
And, I mean, the only thing that makes me hesitant about saying Tampa in 6 is the fact that if it is Carolina, which means that they are 8-0 on home ice in 2 series, then I think...
And they have home ice. They would have home ice against Tampa.
Well, then, here's my belief. Then I believe that we would come out of the first 2 games of the East Final if it's Carolina with a split.
Okay. You think they get one?
Right. I think Tampa gets one somewhere in there.
Right.
And if that's the case, then you already know what needs to happen.
Yep.
And Carolina's got to find a way to be better on the road.
Find a way to win on the road. Right.
And I just get the sense that, and in that case, based on exactly what you said about Rod Brind'Amour, I think that's a case where, once again, I'm sorry, you get schooled by John Cooper.
In Rod we trust.
Well, when it comes to the line matching on the road, that's where you get schooled. If they find a way to steal a game on the road in Carolina, then I think that you lose the advantage because I don't know how you're supposed to. If you can't beat, you're not beating Boston on the road, you're not beating the Rangers on the road, and you're getting chances to do so, I don't know how you're supposed to beat this team on the road if you're already struggling in that respect.
That's fair.
It becomes right now, I'm sitting here looking at it going, Rangers, prove me wrong if you're going to move on and be the first to beat this team at home.
So this
Tampa, prove me wrong and beat this team at home.
This is a bit of a super nerd hockey take.
Okay.
But man, I really want to watch Stamkos, Kucherov. I want to watch that Tampa first line go up against the pairing of Pesci and Slavin. I just want to watch that for 5 to 7 games. Just
for real.
just pump it directly into my veins. Okay, so I think if the Rangers win this game 7, which is, I think, a distinct possibility, right? When you have Igor Shesterkin, you can't count them out because he can just decide to make 65 saves and win.
Coin flip. Yeah, this is the legitimate coin flip.
He can just wake up that morning and decide to piss excellence, and here we are. And if New York makes it through, I do think Tampa smokes them. I think it's I think it's a 6-game series, but I think it's more on the 5 or 6 games side of things. I think if Carolina wins, I also think it's a 6-game series. I agree with you. I think it's more on the 6 or 7 game side of things.
Let me say this about it then, because here's the thing. At the very least, Carolina's followed the same path in both of these series. If they are going to move on, they'll have gone up 2-0, lost the next 2, won game 5, lost game 6, won game 7.
Right.
They'll have never truly trailed in a series. The Rangers, in the meantime, down 3-1 and, to come
Pittsburgh.
back, and then down 2-0,
and then they're
come
behind
back, down 3-2. Like, you're eventually playing the catch-up game is going to catch up to you.
Yep, it takes a lot of energy to come from behind. So.
Like, I think at least because Carolina has always, even in the tied series, they've always been in the driver's seat to some capacity because you're never behind.
Right.
You have the control in front of you. You just need to be like, you go up 2-0, you lose the next 2, you just got to be better than the last 2 in game 5.
Simply be better.
Right. You lose game 6 like this, just got to be better in game 7.
Yep.
That's all it takes. And that's a mentality that I think helps them. When you're the Rangers, you know that you're one mistake away, one bad game away from it all being over. And eventually you're going to run out of energy. I'm going to be curious as anything to see what happens. If the Rangers certainly, to me, have the one position player that changes the game for everything.
Also, if it's Tampa and New York there, man, Corey Perry and Pat Maroon are going to be all up in Shesterkin's kitchen. They're going to be... and in the conference finals where murder is legal,
right?
They're gonna make his life miserable. But
the league, we know, at this point, that the league needs an Edmonton New York final.
That wouldn't be bad. No,
right.
I think on the revenue look, that would be pretty good for them.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna get it at all, but. Well, we will see.
We will see. We do have a game 7 on Monday. We will be back in 2 weeks to discuss. I mean, at that point, I believe we'll be talking about who's in the Stanley Cup final.
I'm actually going to check that now because I do have all the dates in front of me. So
it should be pretty close, yeah. In the meantime, follow us on Twitter at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. You can find the show everywhere you find your podcast: Facebook, Instagram, Podbean, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, SportsTalkPhilly.com. We're all over the place.
So it's the same situation. The only way we are not talking about who's in the Cup final is if we have
double sweeps,
one or both game 7s.
Oh, okay.
In terms of because game 7 of the West would be on that Sunday.
Okay.
And
we might do a Monday show if that's the only game up. We might do a Monday show.
I would not be opposed to that. And then the other game 7, for whatever reason, I don't get this, but for whatever reason, is Tuesday. With a 2-day break in between game 6
I guess
and 7,
because Carolina and New York can't play until Monday. I don't know.
Well,
either way.
Well, no, because it makes no sense that late in the series. So I'm assuming my guess was that they made the schedule based on no matter who gets game 7. Meaning
That's
it
fair.
could be Carolina or it could be the Rangers. I don't know that there's anything happening in Carolina, but you're talking about a building like MSG. You probably have to do some scheduling gymnastics there at this time of year. But let's put it this way. In my mind, that one's not going 7 anyway. So I think that we may be looking at the game, and if that's the case, I agree with.
With how good these playoffs have been, I wouldn't be surprised. So
no, I know. That's more me jumping to your side and going, it's Tampa Bay. I can't do it anymore. They're just, I think that it's going to be what it's going to be. But I do think that even I think if we get a game 7 from Colorado Edmonton, we might just have to push that episode back a day.
Yeah, we'll figure that out.
To figure that out. Well, and here's the thing. I don't want to put it past us to be in preparation. I mean, maybe we should be prepared in any of these 2-week gaps to jump in with a emergency show.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
If a coach gets hired in that time too, because I think that we're going to need to talk more about that.
I agree. So
we'll be prepared for that. If something happens, obviously we'll jump in with a show. But if not,
we'll be back in 2 weeks. And
getting ready for the Cup final. I can't believe it's already. This is flying by. I don't like that. That's the part I don't like.
Yeah, we're already halfway through. Let's stop the ride. I don't want to get off.
Well, that and days like today when you're sitting here going, there's nothing tonight. Oh no.
I know. But
I'll take the fact that we got a Game 7 though tomorrow. I'll take the fact that we have that.
There will be a new podcast episode to listen to tonight, and there will be a new one in another couple of weeks, unless there's some breaking news in the meantime. So, in the meantime, like I said, follow the show at YWT Podcast. Follow Kevin at Kevin_Durso. I already did the rest of the plugs, so we're just going to go ahead and get out of here, and in 2 weeks, we'll see ya.